introduced Commodore R.S. Vasan. He is the Director General of the Chennai Center for China Studies. He is presently the Director General of the Chennai Center for China Studies, Regional Director of the National Maritime Foundation, Chennai Chapter, and Head Strategy and Security Studies at the Center for Asia Studies. An alumnus of the Defense Service Staff College, the Naval War College, and the International Visitor Leadership Program, Commodore Seshadri Vasan has a distinguished service of over 34 years in the Navy and the Coast Guard. His appointments include Command of Warships, 2 major air stations, and a maritime air squadron. He has participated in both 1971 war and IPKF operations. He was an instructor at the Naval War College, India. Prior to retirement, he was the regional commander of the Indian Coast Guard Region East, overseeing the EEZ patrol, SAR, anti-piracy, fisheries protection, maritime border control, marine pollution prevention, and other maritime tasks in the Bay of Bengal. Post-retirement, he has served in many think tanks and is a regular speaker at many international and national conferences. More than anything, he has been a guiding force to many of us. We look up him on a daily basis. We have been sending students to intern there. And more than any of these decorations as a person from the forces, is a great human being that at least I have experienced for the last 10 years. I can tell with that much of command and at least confidence that he is someone who delivers stuff, and he is someone who speaks sense in most of the cases that I've been part of. So it's my pleasure to have you here, sir, and over to you, Commodore Vasan.
Thank you, Dr. Nandakishore. It's always a pleasure to meet up with you and all these wonderful panelists that you have put together today. It's a great initiative in my assessment. It's not that there's any dearth of opinion on what is happening. There are opinions, counter opinions, and different strokes of what is going to happen in terms of the impact that it has on the global order, and in terms of how India needs to respond to this. So let me acknowledge the presence of all the senior veterans who are here, Ram Madhav ji and others, and I also would like to thank Commodore Deshmukh for facilitating this process. Commodore Deshmukh has joined C3S and he's also been very active in all this, and to his credit, he's already published 3 or 4 documents with C3S of great relevance, including on China. So I look forward to, of course, learning from everybody. If you see the name of Mangala Vasan against my place, it is my wife's name. And we are in Rajali where the connection was not good, so I've taken her permission to use her name. So otherwise, everything is under control. So, to look at this, every day there is some development. Even 2 hours ago, there were developments of great significance. The major thing that everybody is worried about is the kind of impact that economic sanctions would have on Russia, on one hand, and the counter responses that Russia initiates on the rest of the world. There have also been selective sanctions that have been imposed on some banking, but they have let the famous Gazprom bank, which deals with gas supply to Europe. So obviously, energy is an important factor that will drive the sanctions narrative in the coming months. So obviously, there is a theory that tells you that from 2014 onwards, Russia prepared for something like this. Because, after the annexation of Crimea, so they knew that as and when they would like to prevent the NATO's positioning in East Europe, they would need to prepare for an active, assertive action such as the one which was demonstrated on 24th February. So apparently the linkages to the global economy, the increasing of their gold stock, the trying to move away from the dollar are all important dimensions of how Russia wants to stem this impact of sanction. It's not that Russia will not be affected, but in a globalized economy, every nation would be equally affected. It is reflected on a daily basis in the stock markets that you see, the kind of fluctuations that are taking place. Now, just a few points of importance as to why Russia has done it, why now, and why is that there has been hardly any response from the so-called NATO, which had promised all the support to Ukraine. So this is where one will have to go back to the history. I will not go very much deep into history, but the point is that Ukraine was always something that Russia wanted to ensure that did not fall in the lap of NATO, because that would have meant that the change of the geographical strategy that was more of a status quo position where NATO forces were not deployed in Ukraine. But the moment there was this threat of Ukraine leading to a certain amount of pressure for joining the NATO, because after all, even today, Ukraine wants to join the NATO, but it's obviously the calculations have indicated to ESO and its allies that it may not be a wise move. So there are official agreements to say that they will not expand the borders in Eastern Europe beyond a particular point. But this is what was violated. And also, there are also some disturbing reports of the location of chemical laboratories, biolabs, which were apparently in Ukraine. No, there were some reports which have been removed from the internet. Whether it is true or not true, time only will tell us. But one has to be very careful when we are analyzing these reports because there is informatization warfare afoot, which is very evident. That is another dimension of this war, which is so very evident that every day you have a narrative, a counter narrative, a false narrative, a manipulation of media information, and also a lot of morphing that takes place. And many videos which are from Syria, from Libya, and others are shown as if they are from this war. So, this is something, of course, which needs to be analyzed. So, any report that comes your way, unless it's from a radical, credible, source, we need to take it with a pinch of salt. Now, what is a credible source? Because everybody is an interested party. Even the Western press, whether it's the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times, they have their agenda. It synchronizes with the policymakers. So, it's not that just because it comes from NYT or WSJ, everything is fine, or just it comes from RT, it is false. So I think we need to be able to look at the entire scenario and look at the scenario that's unfolding in terms of how a modern hybrid warfare is being fought. So there are these dimensions of hybrid warfare. There are lessons for India in terms of what we can learn in terms of this. No, there is another other analysis which all of us, I'm sure, agree with, which is that Ukraine, at the time of dismemberment of the Soviet Union, if it had retained the nuclear warheads on its soil, the guess is that Russia would not have ventured into the Ukraine. So obviously, there is this factor of nuclear deterrence. This is a lesson for us. Luckily, we do have our own second strike capability and the strategic forces command, which is ready. So there are many, many lessons for observers in India at the political level, at the diplomatic level. There have also been many questions on India's response to the Russian aggression. There are no doubts it's an aggression. But Russia had to balance its responses to West on one side and Russia on the other side. So, because when you go back in history, it's only Soviet Unionists that stood by us. This is for decades of story where the Soviet India's friendship treaty worked in our favor to liberate Bangladesh. It has also come to our help in the nuclear domain, in space domain, and even today, some 60-70% of our defense hardware is based on that. So therefore, I think India is in a very tricky position in terms of carrying out outright condemnation in the 3-4 meetings that took place. So abstention perhaps was the best course left to us because, after all, you can't condemn anybody and thereafter on that. And just because you condemned Russia, it was not that Russia was going to stop a war. It has a specific plan. It's working towards that. And we have our own constraints now. We need to be able to balance our relations with US and allies, Europe, and many observers feel that India's abstention amounts to support to Russia. So, this is where there is a tricky portion. I'm sure the diplomats who are going to speak after me will dwell on this issue on what exactly is the diplomatic challenge that we face today and how are we able to overcome this. So far, when you look at the responses by the MEA, and by the government of India and their press releases, it's quite clear that I think we walked the tightrope walk has been so far okay, and but how long can this go on is something. But we need to prepare for the ill effects of something that will be there as a downstream effect of this war. It's already showing in terms of oil prices. It has shot up to 130 US dollars. The dollar also is likely to use its relevance, which is what Russia and China want. But I'm sure the economists in the group will look at those issues of how the fall of dollar or the rise of the Chinese currency and the gold will all again recalibrate the entire economic scene outside. So there are many dimensions to this, and I'm particularly happy that we have this galaxy of highly experienced speakers who are going to analyze this threat wave and tell us what our India's option should be. Whatever else is happening elsewhere, how does it impact the Quad, for example? No, because Quad, every partner has clearly said that it's not a military alliance. It's not like the NATO. They're already looking at blue dot economy. They are looking at blue economy initiatives. They're looking at vaccine diplomacy. They're looking at exchange of technical expertise. So obviously that is something which can go on its own. And in any case, we all know internally that it is definitely something as a countervailing architecture in the Indo-Pacific. So that will continue to be nurtured. So, but this would now face greater challenges in the kind of stiff opposition to India's abstention. Even UAE, which abstained along with us in the next round, did something which we did not expect. So there is a continuous change in the global strategy and our diplomatic initiatives that are there, and they will be stressed to their limits. And luckily, we have a very strong government in the center, and our own assertions by the External Affairs Minister have been very reassuring. In fact, I think he's spared no efforts in explaining our stand very clearly to all the global leaders, whether it is France or Germany or USA or wherever. So, and also the other point, which at least in the public domain, everybody tries to tell you that Ukraine has never supported, and therefore, should we go around supporting Ukraine today? So these are questions that need to be answered. Now, as a military man, I also would like to look at the military impact that's likely to be there on Indian acquisitions. The Indian Navy itself was getting a lot of gas turbines from Ukraine. We also have many of the food supplies which was coming from Ukraine, because there's a only fertile area in Europe. I mean, the best place for soya beans and sunflower oil, etc., etc. So, as far as the how do we now protect ourselves against the kind of delays that are inevitable today in terms of warship supplies? Some of our warships which are being constructed in Russia would face a delay because of this turmoil, and also reprioritization of the supply chain. The supply chain will be under distress. So this is where we needed to look at what kind of alternatives we have, and it's a tough time to be in for any government and for policymakers in the next 5 years, because there were certain trajectories which appeared to help us in our recovery post-COVID, and also in our strategy to engage with the rest of the world to improve our economic might. We all were looking at $5 trillion by 2025 or whatever. So all this will now come under a lot of strain. So the future is, I won't use the word bleak, but I would use the word, it's very, very stressful and challenging for all of us, whether you are in the military, whether you are on the civil streets, whether you are a banker, or whether you are somebody. I think I must also know that, that India had sufficient clout to ensure that our evacuation under Operation Ganga, I understand General Chauhan is likely to talk about it, is something that, it has is given a lot of hope to the citizens of this country, to say that the safety and security of our citizens has not been abandoned. And they have moved everything to establish safe corridors, to even have the airspace to help us out, to provide medical supplies, to allow them to move to the borders. So, there are many, many lessons in terms of how we have coped with the international situation that has caused a lot of anguish to the entire global order. And, it is for us, with the help of researchers who are here today, to look at where we stand in terms of the impact that has been caused because of this Russian aggression against Ukraine. We don't have to keep on going back to the history to say, what happened in the past. So we need to deal with the present and also try and protect our future. So this is where I would like to stop here. I know there are plenty of speakers after me, so I would not like to take away all the time for myself. And also I'm right now in Arakodam, where the connectivity is not so good. So I may have to leave early, for which I apologize to all the panel speakers, but I'll definitely look at the recordings later and revert to you should there be something else. I would like to wish the Indic researchers all the very best in trying to learn the best from the experts who are here today. And I have no doubts whatsoever that together we'll be able to arrive at the takeaways from this discussion, and also ensure that there are key points on which we need to act immediately at different levels, at the government level, at the individual level, at the NGO level, and at the academic level. So there is phenomenal things that are required to be done. There are many areas. So all that obviously cannot be covered in 15 minutes that was allotted to me. But together, I'm sure that at the end of this, I know each speaker would have brought out the total dimensions of what we need to contend with, and what are the way ahead options for us who will be seriously affected. Thank you for this wonderful opportunity, and all the very best. I'll continue to be here as long as the internet holds, and thereafter I'll have to leave with due apologies to all the wonderful panelists who are here. Thank you. Jai Hind.
Thank you, Commodore Vasan. I think that was an excellent sum up of very, very pertinent issues that are going to be haunting the world order itself. Along with that, there are problems, and there are also the ray of hope in terms of the way India conducted itself, and also the options that it has kept open for itself. Being a good student of history, this is what I can say. What has come out very strongly as part of the outcome of this particular fiasco is also that India has been very cautious. India has been a good student of history, and India has made its option very, very clear. I think that was very, very clear in your presentation itself. Thank you so much.